Welcome back to Narrative Dive, where we are deep diving into the stories dominating our world. Today, I'm here with Dr. B, who is an expert on a subject that all of us should learn, and that is burnout. What defines it, what happens when you're feeling it, and how you can recognize it. So, Dr. B, welcome to Narrative Dive. I'm really happy to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me. And if there's anything I know about burnout, it's a physician who's been practicing for 20 years, especially in the emergency room. Average person who works in the ER burns out in about 10 years, and I've been doing it for 20.
Wow, that was actually going to be my first question is what had inspired you to pursue a career path in medicine, especially in the ER, because that's a pretty intense environment.
I've always wanted to be a doctor. I romanticize it. You grow up watching these TV shows that make it look like it's the best thing ever. When I think about the shows that shaped my ideation of medicine, it's definitely in the 90s. I was in college and I watched ER. They made it seem so cool, but now that I'm an adult, I look at it, it wasn't cool. They didn't have lives. And so I didn't really think about that part. And, in the early 2000s, Grey's Anatomy came out. And so really, TV and popular culture really shaped it. And then in reality, my pediatrician, she was very cool. She was a staunch advocate for the community and she took care of disadvantaged people. And she was just somebody to aspire to. So those were the kind of things that shaped my ideation and a desire to be a doctor.
Yeah, I definitely watched ER as well. So, and Grey's Anatomy, there's so many medical shows. It's hard to keep track of all of them, but those are the two top, in my opinion. And you went into the emergency room and stayed working in the emergency room. That is a pretty intense environment. How did you end up picking that specific field?
Kind of picked me. I'm formally trained in, primary care family medicine. I've always moonlighted in the ER. I moonlighted my whole career because I was poor, like really poor. And so beginning of my career from residency on, from the time you could moonlight, I would work my regular shift and at night go work in the ER. I started in a practice in a private practice. I'd work that, and then at night, 3 days a week, I'd work in the ER. At one point, I had three jobs: a weekday ER job and a weekend ER job and a daytime office job. And then I was lucky, right? About 2 years before the pandemic happened, I was like, I make way more money in shift work on the ER than I do anything in the office with less headache, less follow up, no on call. So, and also I was going through divorce, so it was better for the children. So I just wasn't sleeping for a while. Just go to the ER and work at night and be a soccer mom in the day.
That's that's really like Superwoman, right? And because your shifts in the ER were what, 80 to 100 hours a week.
That was the abnormality of the pandemic. That is like in normal times you could not do that. It's normally, and then regular ER doctor works about three shifts a week, so 3 12s. And those of us who want extra, many of us, I know people who work 5 12s a week, 4 or 5 12s. That's normal.
I do remember during the pandemic, a lot of nurses and doctors were burning out, and I was in Germany at the time, and there was nurse shortages happening because physicians and nurses couldn't stand the workload anymore, and obviously too the emotional tax of seeing patients in critical condition from COVID, and there wasn't much they could do to help them. So I really applaud all of you on the front lines of medicine in that sense. Really, it's an amazing.
A safety issue because remember in the beginning we didn't know if this would kill you, and so you're literally asking people to go into a situation that's like battle and say, "Hope you don't die." And so there was kind of that issue too, and there were some people who decided, "No, I'm not doing it." I have friends who decided to go a different way, pick a different way to practice medicine because they didn't want to risk it.
That I can definitely imagine. Yeah, and you're right. There was so little known about it to for the people attending to those who had it, who were in critical conditions. I'm thoroughly impressed with what humans can withstand and especially medical professionals during the pandemic. So you started finding out or you started feeling quite burned out at one point, and you have said that it really snuck up on you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It snuck up on me because I was just working hard. I work hard. That's what I do. My whole career. When you're a doctor, you start working hard somewhere around junior high. When you middle school, when you decide I want to be a doctor, I gotta be serious. I have to get good grades. I need to take honors classes in AP in high school. Then when you get to college, I can't crash out. I can't party too much because I have to get, minimum A minus, and A minus is just about failing in college so you can get into med school. And then from there, on and on and on. You see just constant achievement after achievement after achievement into overachievement. That alone is enough. But you take things like right now, we're in a chronic shortage. So before the pandemic, we're in a shortage. It's even worse now. 40% by some estimations left the workforce after the pandemic. Now in the ER, it's so different. It's forever changed. Patients waiting forever for a room, for a bed because there's no capacity upstairs. There's a room, but no nurse. There's a room, but the staff is off. The doctor's off. So for me, what happened for me is I just diligently worked. It snuck up because just one day I'm driving to work. I drive over the same bridge. It was dreary during the pandemic. So daily, there's some emotional toll. It looked like a movie where nobody was around, like the zombies took us over. That's what it looked like apocalyptic times. It really looked like that. And I would drive over this bridge, nobody on it. So weird. On the bridge, to get to my job, I had to drive a bridge. I live in St. Charles. There's a bridge. And over the Missouri River in gray, foggy, dreary. And something just would tell me, quiet voice, jump in. And it just got louder and louder until I really felt like that's what I wanted to do. And I tried to, and my idea of taking care of it, I would tell you to go get help. But for me, I was like, let me work more, or let me work out. Or maybe if I sleep 8 hours consistently, anything, but I was stressed and depressed. And one of my colleagues died by suicide, somebody who worked in the ER with me. And that's when I knew I had to get help. It just snuck up out of nowhere. But really, it was probably the overwork, overwhelm. It was compounding over time.
And of course, you're putting emotions aside and everything. I used to be a human rights journalist, so I definitely understand how you can compartmentalize things. And I think a lot of high achiever, not even just high achievers, a lot of people tend to do that. Because burnout is a lot of what I like to call identity scripts, right? And you see that in a lot of people, especially people who are high achieving, that really prevent them from handling it. So they tell themselves, I'm fine, this is normal, I just need to push harder. I need to just, get this done and get to this level, and people are depending on me. Why are those detrimental to people realizing that they have burnout?
The truth of the matter is, if you're feeling depleted, you feel like you can't go on, understand that. If you think of the most extreme circumstances, and this is what the pandemic forced me to think, if you were dead tomorrow, the world would go on. Whatever the thing is you think that could not be done, it would get done. Somebody would figure it out. And so the notion that you and you alone can do whatever the thing is preposterous. And nothing taught me that like the pandemic when it was so much of here today, gone tomorrow. Some of the patients use the ER like primary care, so some of them felt like my patients. One in particular with this younger guy with asthma, he worked. He wasn't a bum. He just couldn't afford the health insurance, and so he used the ER to refill his asthma inhaler. And, it seemed like he was having a simple issue, but I came back to work the next day and they said that he passed away. I saw him in the afternoon. He returned back to the ER because that's how COVID was. We weren't able to do what we would normally do. Like a lot of people who we would normally admit, we were sitting home with, you know, instructions. And that was so much moral injury for us, knowing that we weren't doing exactly what we would do, but it was the best we could do.
And how did you address this in yourself at the time?
I didn't, and that was a problem. I didn't. I just kept going because I never got COVID. Many of my colleagues got COVID. I just worked, 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 and filled in. And during that time, we were working 24-hour shifts sometimes. Work a 24-hour shift, go home, sleep for 6 hours, come back.
And how long did it go unaddressed until you finally were able to get help for it?
My colleague's death forced me to think that I needed to do something. And I probably waited about a good year and just went on because the pandemic it was protracted. We had probably a good 5, 6 months where it was just bananas. And then there was just a protracted cyclical oscillation of very, very busy beyond what you can think of, and then just normal busy. We started to love normal busy.
And did you go to any counseling or get help from another doctor, for for example? What was, I
Yeah,
guess, the turning point leading you to finally address it?
and this is why now I do advocacy work because there are no mandatory therapy for doctors. There's not. There are for my colleagues who are the paramedics, policemen, the firemen. And I noticed during the pandemic, we had one of these calls that was kind of tough. And one of the paramedics got off. He had to do mandatory therapy. Now, that should be the case for every doctor, I do believe, for every nurse. That should be the case. We don't have counseling or therapy inbred into the culture of medicine. We don't take care of those who take care of others. It's just kind of a martyrdom type of system, and that needs to change. And so I I got care once, issues with my colleague, and I tried to get a therapist. It actually was quite difficult. That ticked me off. I must have called 30 people. And what helped me find somebody, it was a pandemic. Nobody wanted to see people, remember? Nobody
Ah,
wanted they
yes.
in, and many people weren't doing virtual, and insurance does not cover therapy well. I ended up paying out of pocket. I finally found a therapist through a friend. One of my friends' husband is a psychiatrist.
I did not realize that there was that many barriers to getting access to something so vital. I mean, that I did know that there were a lot of barriers in getting access to therapy through insurance, and it is very costly for a lot of people.
Yeah, and after all that, I paid cash. I thought I found a therapist, and I had one of the big insurance companies, and I thought I found one. Went to our office. She's like, "Yeah, no, we don't take this kind of your insurance plan."
Of course. I can't tell
And
you
I
how many times I've run into that, or then they tell you, "Oh, it's out of network," and then you're going, "Well, here's some money."
a lot of money. I mean, I must I know that I spent a minimum of 10,000 on therapy, and everybody can't do that. That's just unacceptable. Everybody should be able to get well. So
Oh, I
that
absolutely agree.
that is such a problem in our healthcare system here in America.
It is, and do you see that in the emergency room? People coming in who've experienced, because I know there's a lot of warning signs to burnout, but people don't call it burnout, right? It's they start having brain fog or they become really cynical or depressed, pain in the body, which manifests, or what are usually mistaken as anxiety symptoms like palpitating heart, shaking, that sort of thing. Do you see a lot of that in the emergency room? Have you treated a patient that has come in with those symptoms?
Well, I feel like burnout is kind of the precursor to, extreme depression, really. It's that kind of flatlining of emotions, that sense of purposelessness. Why am I doing this? Why do I even bother? Type of deal. I don't see people in the ER per se with burnout, but depression and suicidality for sure. A lot of times due to high stressors from the things that they do. And in physicians, it is ubiquitous. It's just so much. One doctor per day dies by suicide.
And that's in the United States.
In the United
Or
States, yes, ma'am.
wow, that is an alarming statistic. 1 doctor per day.
A whole medical school class. So if you think about it like that, so we're talking about the shortages, but one of the things we need to do is take care of the ones we already have.
Yes, especially given that that person has so much institutional knowledge, medical knowledge. To lose such a valuable member of society is very devastating.
Yes, but also, I mean, remember, we're humans. That's somebody's mother, brother, cousin, sister, and just to lose them and what it does to their family. We need to think about the human cost of it all.
What do you think needs to be done to help physicians?
The more and more I'm an advocate, and my main source of income now is speaking. I love to speak at conferences. I speak on this issue. The best paid places that deal with this issue is actually not the hospital system. It is corporate places. They really aggressively are addressing the burnout problem because they understand finances. And that is easier and more cost effective to keep somebody in the position versus constantly hiring. Whereas hospitals don't get that. Hospitals will let you go. Oh, we don't have the budget. Well, if you don't have the budget, you're gonna spend it. You're stepping over a dollar to save a dime. Is what hospitals do. And so they do not many, there are a few, do wellness programs to take care of the doctors, no or nurses, because they go through it too. No mental health programs, no, wellness issues, no wellness initiatives, even though there's some legislature now called the Lauren and Breen Act. I'm an ambassador for Lauren and Breen. It's a not-for-profit wherein every hospital, signed to legislation, I think in 2022, every hospital is supposed to have some suicide prevention plan. Most hospitals are skirting around it with a poster that they put up in the break room.
Probably next to the wage poster that they're federally required to post. One
That
of
is
those.
exactly the vision I have in my head. Mhm.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. You have what military veterans often talk about how they struggle with PTSD and their access to treatment is also limited. I mean, there is a VA, there are treatment options and programs, but the feedback I've gotten from several of them is that they weren't really adequate and heavily focused on medication. So there is no central sort of program for physicians that exists for mental health.
No, there's not, and there should be. But I think that we're kind of hitting a turning point. I'm seeing more and more physicians become physician coaches, and I think that's what it takes. Reason being is when I got help, therapy was great. The medication really stabilized me once I saw uh, a doctor. But I was just okay at that point. I wasn't thriving. I was just alive and going on and not suicidal. But I didn't feel anything. It was just flat and just enough to not be suicidal. And that's not living. So once I worked with a physician coach, it just helped me reframe and really have permission to feel what I was feeling and banish guilt because I feel like the training of a physician makes you think that you should be a martyr, that you should lay your body and life on the line and put everything aside to do this mission. That's kind of how residency is. You just go to the brink of collapse 30, I think 30-hour calls, that's the rule now. It used to be longer, but you can only work 30 hours. Then you do that every 2 to 3 days. It was a lot.
And it's not like you're just dealing with documents on a screen. I mean, you're dealing with people's lives, which my only relation to that is back when I was a human rights journalist and having to cover these horrible atrocities, realizing that people had been killed in a way that was so devastating. I remember carrying some of that trauma vicariously. And one time having an anxiety breakdown in 2011 over I was finishing a book series about 50 women from 30 countries, and a lot of the stories in the book are quite heavy. I mean, they're talking about surviving a genocide, right? And I didn't recognize that a lot of that was compounding in me as well. And I think with journalists, for example, we tell ourselves, well, I'm just a medium. So, and that's that person's experience. I didn't live that experience. There's always some reason why you are not allowed to feel the way that you were feeling, or that when the anxiety creeps up on you or the burnout creeps up on you, you don't allow yourself to have it in your mind. You're like, it's not my story. So I'm not allowed to feel the way that I feel. And yeah, I remember in 2011 having a bit of a crash over that, and it took me out for about a week. It's, just to kind of recover from all of the really horrible things I had witnessed. So that's the only way that I would be able to relate to someone working in an emergency room because I know that you can't predict what cases you're going to get. You can't predict the severity of people coming in. So I can only imagine day to day doing that for decades like you have, how that could compound in a person.
Definitely.
So you work a lot with women leaders. And if you look at a lot of stats, you see that women, especially the UN has recognized this for many years now, and that's that unpaid care work or raising children, caring for unwell family members disproportionately falls on women, which compounds on top of their other financial or professional duties as well. Women are also trying to be reliable, trying to be strong, but this can also accelerate burnout. What have you witnessed in working with women in particular?
Well, and this is common in women. That's that second shift. It feels like you're punching a time clock when you go home because Most women, even when you're the primary breadwinner, you're still the one plans the vacation, you picks up the kids, you take them to soccer practice, you're looking at the schedule for all the tournaments. I know that's my life. And so I am blessed. I've had to hire help, had a nanny, and that has helped tremendously. I know everyone is not able, but that will accelerate the burnout to no end. You're at work and you're seeing emergencies and your family's calling. Sometimes my family's been trained and they've learned, like, where are my soccer shoes? Where are my cleats? You can't call me. There's an emergency in this other room. This guy's been in a motorcycle crash, you know? And so that is the stress. That is the stress.
And so your family knows not to bother you in the middle of a shift for something trivial like where are my cleats?
You better not call me for that. You will pay for that. But so my family knows, call me if they're and when they do call me, I go into panic mode, like, who died? What happened? Is something bad going on, you know? They can text me, but do not call me.
And it's also teaching people to be responsible for themselves too, right? Which could help reduce burnout in a lot of women, especially mothers, because the more independent your children or your family are, then it relieves a lot of responsibility for you in that capacity. So you have taught something called the oxygen mask principle in a lot of your speaking.
Yes, that's one of the things I teach. I teach people how to care for themselves first because, we've all been on an airplane and they say before, if in the event of emergency, before you put the mask on your child, put the mask on you first because think about it. If you were dead, then you can't take care of anyone else. So healthcare workers need to especially do this. We possess skills that save lives, that alter lifetimes. And so if we are not taking care of ourselves, then so many more people, it's a domino effect, are affected.
And do you find that a lot of those that you work with struggle with this concept of putting themselves first?
Yes, I do. I'm taking better care of myself now out of necessity and out of trying to practice what I preach, what I speak on. And when I have free time, I just don't know what to do. I have to sit on my hands so I don't do anything. I literally some days will sit on my hands. Because all I know how to do is to be a busy worker, which is what it is to be a physician. And I wish somebody would have taught me years ago it's okay to relax. It's okay to let loose.
Well, I guess what you could do in the meantime is podcast conversations with interesting folks.
That's right. That's right. I do that. I've been filling some time with that.
So that way you're not, trying to busy yourself. But I definitely understand. I also have the same issue where I can't not do anything and I'm constantly doing things. And sometimes I'm like, am I contributing to this burnout feeling myself? It's funny how you can't give yourself permission to relax. You almost need someone else to kind of grab you by the shoulders and say, stop, sit
Yeah.
down, relax.
And that's why therapy is so important. Because I could tell you, sit down, relax. But for me, I'm like, but this can be done and that can be done. I could just fit one more thing in. But why? Life is too short.
No,
And you
exactly.
don't want to spend all your time at work.
No, definitely not. If you could give us your practical reset, what could
Okay.
someone do in the next 48 hours to stop them from spiraling if they find themselves in the middle of a spiral?
I use the first principle because you have to think about if I put myself first, what does that look like? And number one, this is especially true for doctors and clinicians. We need to fuel. Most of us don't eat right. We eat like just whatever we can, and we're telling you be eat nutritious, but you see your doctor and he or she is so woefully unhealthy. So, you got to fuel our body right. And we have to just be selfish and imagine what reality we really want. And then take real steps towards getting towards that, where we're actually spending time with our families and not working all the time. Um, and then standards. I set standards, which means really boundaries. I treat people how to treat me. I teach them how to treat me. I don't have a hard no on some things. Like I don't work generally on Sundays. It's a hard no. I go to church, I go to brunch, I relax with the family because my kids are about to go to college and I just want to spend time. Because after this, yeah, they're going to be everywhere and across the country. Won't see them anymore. And so a hard boundary. Don't call me with anything on those days. And then lastly, I protect my time. Like it's a job. I used to say yes to everything, but every time you say yes to everything or something, you're saying no to something else. And so I go, what things do I want to do with my time? And some of my patients on their deathbed, they told me you don't wish for more money at the end of days, you wish for more time. And so I protect it. And I schedule it. I schedule time with my family, time with my guy, time with my, um, specifically with each child, pouring in, just protected it, and less time working, realizing that I never needed to work that much. It was just fear-based.
You touched on a very, very good point there about overworking being fear-based. In some cases, it's like FOMO, right? Because people think if I don't do more, that I won't get these skills or I'll miss out on something. Or sometimes it's an inadequacy, like a feeling of inadequacy. If I don't do enough, then I'm not contributing. So it's very tricky, the mental gymnastics a person can go through as they're on the road to burning out or breaking down. So, what would a person do in the next 30 days if they were trying to redirect themselves out of where they're at emotionally?
You know what? I love James Clear. I love habits. You know, I love, habit stacking. And so I actually do 7 things the same every day. Like, my daily 7, I get up, I move my body. It's usually Peloton. Instead of having that fear based overworking, I know my numbers. So I check the money every day and say, okay, you don't need to work. If they call you, you do not have to come in. You have enough. You're fine. And really speak to myself. So number 3 is I'm affirming myself. $1,000,000 thoughts. I have friends that know my plight. That's my squad. I make sure I connect to them every day. It's either by text, and on Mondays we try to get on a Zoom and encourage each other for whatever it is we're endeavoring in. Like, I'm doing the TEDx at the end of March. So they check, how you doing emotionally? How's everything going? And so, connecting with your squad. Because I have a business, I want to stay disciplined. And so every single day I do at least one money generating activity, whether that is connect with someone who is a decision maker, who might be able to bring me in to speak, things like that. Do that type of thing every day. And by just habit stacking like this, I can see how I'm more balanced. Another one of my habits is every day I delegate something. I look at my to-do list and I say, who can do something on this list? Whether it be my virtual assistant, my executive assistant, or even my children. Hey, you can do this. Or maybe it's Instacart. They can bring the groceries. I don't need to do that. So I'm delegating. And setting boundaries, I think it's important to teach people how to treat you. Like, no, I cannot work 5, 6 shifts a week. I'm very PRN right now, or part time, and or boundary. No, I cannot speak for free all the time. I need to be paid because this is my livelihood. I get asked to speak free often, and that only happens when it's a cause that's near and dear to my heart because capacity. And I find myself having to say no, and less I'm feeling less bad about it because I am taking care of me. And so just
That makes a
if
lot of sense.
just follow some habits, and before you know it, that's how you live, and now you live a life where you're putting yourself first.
It's funny that you mentioned the speaking for free because we're doing a big panel at the United Nations next week on non-consensual intimate imagery, and it's like there's not an honorarium when you speak at the United Nations. People think there is, but there really is not. But at the same time, you recognize that you're putting an important message out to people who are receptive and who need it. So I do understand that piece. I do a lot of speaking myself, and it can get tricky when you get a lot of requests with your time. So I feel very honored that you're speaking with me right now on the podcast then.
I
And that
mean, it's such an important topic.
oh, hugely important. I mean, it affects every human on earth at some point or another in their lives. We had a guest on last year, and she wrote a book about 4 currencies. So she segmented currencies out, and she said, in people's lives, they often think currency is just money, right? But she said time, energy, space, and money are the 4 currencies that you have to pay attention to. And when you were talking about outsourcing some of those tasks, you're paying attention to your time currency, or if you're around people who are very draining or a family member who's very draining, then you're spending your energy currency. And after talking to her, it changed the way I was thinking about, my life force and what I was giving and the cost of everything. And I had only thought of cost as financial, right? Instead of all of these other elements. So that's a very helpful concept as well for anybody who's assessing how they're spending their life currency. I call it the life currency, all four of those, because it's basically the collection of what you have in your life, right? So, is there anything that I have not asked you about that I should have asked you about?
Oh, no, just how can people find me? If you text the word strong to 55444, then you can follow me there. But generally, I could talk all day about burnout. I can talk all day about stress management, what it does to the body. I don't think we did touch on that because
Oh, yes, let's.
the chronicity of stress, that's something I really want to address because it affects women more than men. And that happens because of how society is set up. It's just ingrained in the society that many women end up doing the second shift. And that's well documented. That's just not, there are some involved men, but most women are doing the second shift and planning all the family activities on top of whatever their job is. And a lot of women have demanding jobs. So the chronicity of stress is where stress is good. We need it to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. But we do not need stress. It's a primitive instinct. And what happens is hormones go up. The hormones, cortisol go up so that you can break down energy and give it to your muscles so that you can run away from the saber-toothed tiger. And then adrenaline makes your heart beat fast. It gives you that superhuman strength instantaneously, like a shot of epinephrine. Just like when you're an allergic reaction, just brings you out of it. We sometimes are staying in that chronic stress state that we were never meant to be in for long times, staying at the heightened level, and it's causing high blood pressure. And it's causing increased cortisol causes glucose resistance and diabetes. And you end up with chronic diseases over time. It also changes you on a cellular level. Lack of sleep too changes you on a cellular level. And it can cause autoimmune diseases. That's why autoimmune diseases are more common in women. And so 80% of autoimmune diseases are in women. And then it's even higher for African American women because then there's the chronicity of you're already dealing with day-to-day life, sexism, now I have racism. And so stress is inevitable. How you respond to it is what the key is. And so that's why I'm a stress management expert. The ER is all stress. Every, ambulance is coming in. Oh my God, what do we do? You keep calm and carry on like the queen. And you take a deep breath and you hold it. And it really does set your sympathetic nervous system, sets the tone. You'll see me deep breathing every time some case is coming in because where overwhelm and stress are present at heightened levels, a good decision cannot be made. And if you're bleeding, you want me to make a good decision. If you're gasping for air, you want me to make a good decision. You don't want me freaking out.
No, definitely not. I feel like you need a physician robe with that, with rhinestones in the back or something where that would be on there. But yes, that is true. With the ER, you don't know what you're getting from minute to minute. So what
Exactly.
are some stress management things people can do on a day-to-day to help them even everything else?
Again, it's a daily 7. My whole daily 7 is set up to decrease stressors, decrease burnout, and make sure that it's a pattern and a habit to take care of myself. Eat real food, move your body, make sure you're, drinking water, delegate tasks. So involve, don't try and do everything. Uh, Make sure that you're not reacting to your money, but you're managing it so that you're proactive and doing something to constantly bring money in makes it so you don't feel like you have to overwork. Just everything in a graded measurement that makes your life go and turn it into habit stacking. So I want to take care of my health. I want to take care of my wealth. And so I have habits that I do every day that address all of those things. So I'm taking care of my mental health by not doing too much, asking people to help me and setting boundaries, taking care of my financial health by always checking on it. Because something weird could happen on it. I didn't used to check on it. And, what is this charge recurrent? Who is that? It's so much money that we waste. And, I also encourage people, I use apps. There's an app you can use for that, Rocket Money. So just check that app and make sure that I'm not getting charged for 2 Netflix accounts, which I was at one point. Like, who do I know in this country? I don't. So, that those things, just simple setting up life to a system.
The micro habits do make a huge difference because especially when it comes to nutrition, for example, People will say, okay, well, I'm going to eat this now and then change my diet later. But I've explained to people, no, slowly but surely replace the sour cream with Greek yogurt, or find ways to make smaller improvements that build the confidence in you to continue to make larger improvements. I've heard from many people that I've interviewed that that's actually one of the best things that they can do, is start with the smaller improvements if they don't feel confident enough to make a bigger leap forward with something.
Yep. Crawl, walk, run.
Exactly. That's a good one. Well, there is a tradition that I have on this podcast now that it's entering its third season. And I ask all of my guests, what narrative have they challenged lately? And what was the result? And I've gotten some very interesting answers to this.
You know what? Kind of one of the main narratives I'm challenging right now is it relates to diversity, that it doesn't matter. I've gone back and looked in history and saw how so many different types of diverse individuals. I've been looking at history of medicine. Diverse individuals in medicine and women's health have contributed so much to where I know it matters. So diversity in medicine is important, especially if we're going to take care of each type of human. Oh, and the result is I've become more of an advocate. And the result is become someone who is working with our state legislature. So that's what the result has been.
There have been many examples of how women were treated with certain doses of medicines that were actually dosed for men, right? And especially with menopause, for example, that was one of the last big branches of medicine that there was not enough diversity and understanding in that field.
Exactly. And women's health is having a moment because women's health has been put on the back burner for too long. But there's enough women who are becoming in positions of leadership and are able to start to change the tide. So that's a beautiful thing. And taking care of all the humans. I mean, women have specific health issues. I mean, we don't always need to address everything male. Let's be even handed about it.
Did you learn anything really interesting where you said, oh, I had no idea that that was the case?
I learned about Vivian Thomas. I saw a movie about him, and I saw that he helped develop something called Blaylock technique on doing heart surgeries on babies. And he was never allowed to be a doctor. But he did everything a doctor does, and he trained other doctors. And then there was an African American doctor who could not her name escapes me, but she could not deliver babies at the hospital. She had a medical degree in the early 1900s, so she delivered thousands of babies in homes. So that type of stick-to-itiveness, that type of grit, it really instilled a sense of pride. And it also inspired me to keep doing this work that I get to do. It's not something I have to do, I get to do it.
I was doing a piece on 23andMe, or rather its downfall, a couple of years back, and I got to research some similar cases, and I was really shocked, like the Henrietta Lacks case
Uh,
about how they had taken cells from her body and never compensated the family or acknowledged it until it came to light later. And I just thought, I wonder how many of these types of cases exist in medicine that we still haven't unearthed, and I mean, at least thousands, I'm sure. So if I wanted to work with you or get in touch with you or bring you on to speak somewhere, how would I find you?
Oh, you can, my website is PamelaBuchananMD.com and text the word strong to 55444. And that's how you can follow me and get my newsletter.
And I also must add, everybody should watch your TED Talk.
All right. Thank you. Yes. You can find that on YouTube.
Well, Dr. B, thank you so much for joining me. This information will help a lot of people who need to hear it, frankly, right? Maybe it'll help them stop in their tracks and realize that they need to get help. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.